before he ruled Rome, before he became emperor, before fear and silence surrounded his name. He was born into one of the oldest and most formidable bloodlines in Roman history, the house of the Claudii. The Claudii did not begin in Rome. They came from the Sabine town of Regilli, a proud and ancient people. Led by their patriarch, they entered Rome in its earliest days, bringing with them not just followers, but ambition. The Senate welcomed them. They were granted land beyond the river Anio and a burial place near the capital itself. From that moment forward, the Claudii became one of the pillars of Roman power. Their legacy was unmatched. 28 consulships, 5 dictators, 7 censorships, triumphs, victories, authority. They were warriors, statesmen, and, at times, tyrants. Some among them saved Rome. Appius Claudius Caecus stood against surrender to Pyrrhus. Claudius Nero crushed Hasdrubal before he could join Hannibal. But others brought chaos. One Claudius tried to enslave a free woman out of lust, sparking rebellion. Another mocked the gods before battle and paid for it with defeat. The Claudii were not just powerful, they were dangerous. From this bloodline came a child, a boy who would inherit both its strength and its darkness. His name? Tiberius. He was born in Rome, but not into peace. His childhood was shaped by war, by flight, by fear. His father, a loyal supporter of Caesar, stood on the losing side of history after the assassination. Rome descended into chaos, and so the child Tiberius fled with his family, from city to exile. At times, danger came close, too close. Once, as soldiers stormed a town, his crying nearly betrayed them. Another time, fire surrounded their path in the night, burning his mother's clothing as they barely escaped. This was no ordinary upbringing. This was survival. Eventually, they returned to Rome, and there, under the shadow of a new rising power, a man named Octavian, Tiberius began to change. At just 9 years old, he stood before the Roman people and delivered a funeral oration for his father. A child, speaking with the weight of Rome upon him. Years later, he would ride beside Augustus himself in triumph, not as a boy, but as a symbol, a future. He was trained for greatness, given command, given responsibility, given war. In the East, he restored kings to their thrones. In Gaul, he brought order to chaos. In the Alps, he crushed entire tribes. In Germany, he moved nations themselves, 40,000 people, and resettled them under Roman control. Victory followed him. Honor followed him. Power was within reach. But something was different about Tiberius. He did not crave the spotlight. He did not chase glory. And when Rome offered him everything, he turned away. At the height of his power, he walked away from Rome, from politics, from ambition, from destiny itself. He sailed to Rhodes and vanished from public life. No guards, no titles, no power. Just a man walking among strangers. But Rome does not forget, and power does not release its grip so easily. Behind him, whispers began, suspicion, jealousy, fear. And soon, the man who had once stood beside emperors would become something else entirely. A shadow, a mystery, a ruler who did not wish to rule. This is the beginning of Tiberius. After years in the shadows, he returned to Rome, not as a conqueror, not as a ruler, but as a man waiting, watching. Tiberius did not rush toward power. He stepped away from it. He left behind the noise of politics, the ambition of men, and chose silence, a quiet life, a forgotten presence in the empire he would one day rule. But Rome does not forget bloodlines, and fate does not wait forever. When the heirs of Augustus fell, one by one, the future of Rome became uncertain. A vacuum formed, and in that silence, Tiberius was chosen. Adopted by Augustus himself, not out of love, but necessity. From that moment, everything changed. Power began to gather around him, slowly, inevitably. He was granted authority over the provinces, command over armies, influence over kings. Even the Parthians, Rome's greatest eastern rival, were ordered to respect him. And then, war came. Illyricum erupted, a rebellion unlike any Rome had faced in generations. 15 legions marched. The empire held its breath. For 3 brutal years, Tiberius fought, not with glory, but with discipline, endurance, control. Hunger struck his armies, supplies ran thin, the enemy refused to break. But he did not retreat, he did not gamble, he endured. And in the end, he crushed them. Rome was safe again, but fate was not finished. Far to the north, disaster struck. 3 Roman legions wiped out in the forests of Germania. An entire army erased. The empire trembled. Had Illyricum not been subdued, Rome might have fallen into chaos. Tiberius had not just won a war, he had prevented a catastrophe. The Senate offered him glory, titles, names of greatness. But even then, he waited. He entered Rome not as a triumphant conqueror, but as a servant of order. He knelt before Augustus, not as an equal, but as a son. Yet behind the loyalty stood something else, something colder: control. In Germany, he returned once more, this time with caution. No risks, no mistakes. Every movement calculated, every decision measured. He trusted no one completely, not even fortune. And still, victory followed him. But power always carries enemies. A man slipped into his camp, not a soldier, not a loyal Roman, an assassin. Fear gave him away, and under torture, the truth came out. Even in victory, death was never far. After years of war, he returned again to Rome, this time as something more. He celebrated his triumph, honored his soldiers, rewarded the people, and yet he never rushed toward the throne. Because he knew something few men understood. Power is not taken in a moment. It is built in patience. Then, the end came. Augustus was dying. The man who built an empire was leaving it behind. Tiberius was summoned. They spoke alone for hours. No one knows what was said, but when he left the room, Rome's future had already been decided. Soon after, Augustus died. And in the silence that followed, something darker occurred. A rival was quietly removed, an order given, or perhaps never given at all. And just like that, the path was cleared. The Senate gathered. The empire waited. Tiberius stepped forward, reluctant, hesitant, unwilling, or pretending to be.
"I have taken a wolf by the ears," he said. Power, once grasped, could not be released.
And so, the man who never chased the throne became master of Rome. But the question remained, was he Rome's protector or the beginning of something far more dangerous?
As the years passed, the rule of Tiberius grew darker and far more terrifying. After the fall of his powerful minister Sejanus, paranoia consumed him completely. What followed was not governance, but fear. Accusations of treason spread across Rome like wildfire. No one was safe. Senators, nobles, generals, even friends. A careless word, a joke, or even silence could mean death. Rome itself became a place of whispers. Trials were no longer about justice, they were spectacles of terror. Informers thrived, rewarded for accusing others. Families turned on each other. Loyalty meant nothing. And far away, on the island of Capri, Tiberius watched it all unfold. He rarely appeared in public again. Instead, he ruled through letters, cold, distant, and often deadly. Orders for executions were sent from the shadows, while Rome slowly lost the stability it once knew under Augustus. The Senate, once powerful, had become little more than a tool of fear. Meanwhile, the empire itself began to weaken. Borders were neglected. Enemies grew bolder. The strength of Rome was fading, not through invasion, but from within. Then came the final years. Old, isolated, and increasingly hated, Tiberius withdrew completely from Rome. Rumors spread wildly about his cruelty, his excesses, and his madness. By now, the people no longer saw him as a protector of Rome, but as a tyrant. In AD 37, the long and troubled reign of Tiberius came to an end. He died at the age of 77. Some say it was natural. Others whisper he was smothered to ensure the rise of his successor. That successor was Caligula, a man who would soon become even more infamous than Tiberius himself. And so, the man who once showed discipline, restraint, and military brilliance ended his life in isolation, fear, and hatred. Tiberius leaves behind a legacy unlike any other Roman emperor, a ruler who began as Rome's greatest hope, but became one of its darkest chapters. Because in the end, Rome was not conquered by its enemies. It was consumed by the men who ruled it, and Tiberius was one of the most dangerous of them all. Rome was not destroyed in a single day. It fell piece by piece, through ambition, through power, through men like Tiberius. And this was only the beginning, because after him came rulers even more dangerous, even more unpredictable, even more ruthless. So the question is, was Tiberius the problem, or was he the warning? If you want to see how Rome truly changed after this, make sure you subscribe, because the next episode only gets darker. Like the video if you felt the weight of Rome's history, and tell me in the comments, do you think Tiberius was a necessary ruler or a tyrant that Rome should have feared from the start? The empire is just beginning.